So these female spades that I'm using, lugs, are very specific for this C201 connector, and I did a lot of research and I found the actual part number for that connector, which then provided me the part number for these locked-in spade connectors. So Mauser Electronics down in Richardson, Texas sell these. They're really cheap. I ordered 24, but it was only a few bucks. Actually, shipping was more than the cost of these. It took about 5 days to get here. So here's the part number, that 1530471-L, and you really need these because they're specifically built to go in the connector and they won't unlock. I tried to do some cheap 18-22 gauge spades from the auto parts store, and they did not work. So it's worth to do this. And again, here's the part number, and that's what you want to use when you do this. It's going to be a good factory fit on these connectors that we've created. Okay, so basically I'm using 18 gauge wire. I've got these special connectors that we talked about right here. And so I'm going to strip off a little bit of wire. Probably about a ½ inch. Just like that. Now these connectors are made so with a special tool that they'll actually lock in there and you don't have to solder, but I don't have that special tool, so I'm just going to mechanically use this. I'm going to roll these over and lock it in place, and I'm going to solder it just to make sure. Again, I'm going to roll one side at a time. Kind of lock it in place best I can. Okay, so then once I have that, then I'm going to put some solder on it. Hold it out here like this. So I've got my soldering iron. It's already hot. You can tell it's hot, so I always like to put a little dab of solder on there. Hold it on the back side. Heat it up a little bit. And then once it starts to flow, just a little dab, let it cool off, and that's how we're going to do it. Okay, so we're back at the truck now. We've got the connector, and we're going to go ahead and put the 4 wires in. So the first one we're going to do is the easy one. It's B1, and it's actually labeled right there as B1. And like we showed you, per the map, on this sheet, you can align yourself with the B1. This is the biggest part, is make sure you know exactly what you're looking at. What I like to do is this little tab right there on the connector is going to line up with this tab right here. So if you look at that, that'll give you the orientation. And also, like we talked about, here's that pink wire. It's A2, and again, you can kind of orientate that. So the biggest giveaway here is the B1 right there. So you're going to unlock this blue tab, and this thing just slides out, and it's what locks the pins in. And then you're going to take one of your connectors that you made, one of the wires, and I've already got it labeled down here with B1. That way I know, I mean, obviously you could get different colored wire and do this, but I've labeled it B1 so that way I don't get confused when I go to connect it to the actual new turn signal stuff. So this is going to go in from the back side into the hole over here for B1, and you want to take a look at the end of it, and you want to look at the end of the other connectors in the row. So I'm going to slide that in there. And then once I get that slid in there, I'm going to do the other 4 and then replace this blue on both of these, lock these back in place, and I'll have all 4 in there, and we'll show you that completed product once I get all 4 of mine in. Okay, so I've put all 4 wires in. This is what mine looks like. You see the back side. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Got them all labeled with blue tape. B18, B32, B10, B1. Get all labeled. And so I'm going to reassemble this plug Gonna slide that up in there. Put these blue things back in. I guess before you assemble the plug, put these blue things back in, slide them in. Reassemble this plug. Put it back in to the C201 connector back there and lock it in place. And so that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so after I had all 4 wires done, again I marked them all with a B1, B10, B32, and B18. I decided I wanted to test this out before I got too far into it. And so I just went ahead and I took the new turn signal stock that I purchased, and again I haven't cut off the ends yet to it. I know this looks really backwards, but I used some solid thin gauged copper. I just shoved it in there into the pin, and then I just twisted with some little bit of electrical tape. Now again, you want to make sure you protect this because there is 12 volts on there. You don't want it to short out. So again, this is just for testing purposes only. If this works, I'm going to cut this connector off, and then I'm going to do actual solders with heat shrink. So with this connected correctly, again for testing purposes, I have the original stock still hooked up just for turn signals. This again is just for the testing of the cruise control. So now in order to take it for a test drive, I need to install the cruise control module under the hood, and let's do that next. Okay, so here we are under the hood. I went ahead and installed the new cruise control modulator, and you can see it right there. You can see the connector is connected to it. That connector that was just sitting there. And again, I took it off this stud right there, removed the dust cover, plugged it in. Now, like I said before, my truck does not have the studs in the firewall, as some on the internet mentioned they already have studs already existing. So I'm gonna have to put some kind of sheet metal screws in mine to keep it in place. But for right now, I've just got it tucked down there. So if you follow the wire out of it, or the control cable out of it, I already had a connection point for it right there. I throw it around. Again, this is the throttle, your accelerator pedal. This is the new pedal. Mine already had a connection right there to lock it in place, and then it goes in right there. So again, I think it's important if you buy one of these cruise control modulators, again out of a 2001 or newer Blazer off of eBay, this one cost me 35 bucks with free shipping. Just ensure that's got the entire cable coming out of it, a connection to this standoff right here, and then make sure the end's on there. So really take care, make sure it's got all those little pieces and parts to it, and then again make sure it's in a 2001 or newer, so the connection works right up to it. So again, I've got this, I know this is a little backwards right here, but this is right now just to hold it in place. I just wanted to test it, set it up for testing, and then if it works, I'll permanently install it. So let's go take it for a test drive. So I just got back from a test drive and everything worked great. Amazingly enough, I just took it out around the block. I did about 35 miles an hour. I turned the cruise control on. There is a little cruise control factory light that comes in over here. It's green. It worked. I did the Excel on the button. I tested everything. Also, since this is a 5-speed manual truck, I tested the clutch pedal, made sure the clutch pedal disengaged the cruise control, and it did. And obviously I hit the brake pedal and it disengaged. So everything worked as advertised. And now I'm going to permanently install it. I'm going to go ahead and do the connections right down here. I'm going to do some soldering. I'll show you the results of that. And then we're going to actually remove the old stock and put the new one in. And then we'll go underneath the hood and permanently mount that cruise control modulator. Okay, so I've cleaned up those splices. I took off that plug. Now I'm sure with a little research you'll probably find the actual connector for this thing, but again, I'm satisfied with just doing soldering with heat shrink, and I'm going to wrap that with some electrical tape, and I'm going to go ahead and replace the stock with a new one, and then I'm going to use zip ties and wire ties and get that all loomed and organized better. So that's it, hardwired in place, and now I'm just going to clean it up and I'm going to install the new one. Now the new one's going to go on relatively easy. So on these stocks, there's only 2 screws. There's a torque screw right there, and there's another one up top. So just take those 2 off, and in the rear there are 3 plugs. 1, 2, and then there's one back there, 3. Take those 3 off, and then I'm going to install the new one. Okay, so I've got the old turn signal stock removed. I got the new one installed again. Just 2 hex screws, one on top of here, and then one down here. This one was a little difficult to get to, but I was able to get a Torx T20 in there to get it out. Reconnected the 3 connectors here, here, and then 2 back there. Just a piece of cake. Just take a small screwdriver, release them. It's not a big deal. And then there's my new cruise control line right there. I've just dressed it up and cleaned it up and put it with the rest of this, the bundle coming out of the steering column back towards that C102 plug. I went ahead and left the paper tape and here just as a marker in case I ever have to come back in here and replace this thing, or someone in the future gets this truck and has to do it. So before I close everything back up, I'm going to go ahead and take it for one more test drive, make sure everything works, check my windshield wipers, check the turn signal, just make sure everything, the high beams, all that stuff works, and then I'll start closing and reinstalling all the panels that I took off beforehand.